1. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, as time moves and the world grows, many members of the younger generation are adapting to new mentalities that are frowned upon by the older generations. The 21st century has led to many social advances through the use of technology and social media. One of the changes that is becoming more and more prominent in Gen Z is the choice to not have children. Perhaps in the past, this idea would have been considered scandalizing, but now, more than ever, people are choosing not to have children for a multitude of reasons. It is a personal choice and a human right that cannot be taken away through any form of law or peer pressure. On this note, we, the proposition, agree with the motion that as a Gen Z couple, we choose not to have children. In our eyes, people should have the right to dictate their lives and the changes that will play a huge part in their lives. One of these changes include having children. We should not be forced into anything that we are not ready for, and we should be allowed to choose things and live our lives at the pace that we believe is correct for ourselves. Before proceeding any further, I would like to outline my team's case split. To begin with, I, the first speaker, will provide an argument of the personal choice and right that every human on this planet should have the right to exercise, and how modern times have impacted the mentality of the younger generation. The second speaker, Doha, will be giving examples as to why we cannot have children, as to why we should be able to choose to not have children through economical and social political reasons. And Doha will be giving the reply speech as well. Without further ado, I will go ahead and present my argument. Now, as previously stated, it is our choice to not have children. We should be allowed to choose when and how we dictate our lives. One of these is through freedom of choice. It is a human right to choose when and how your life moves. And as life moves along, we change through different events and through different moments that impact our mentalities. One of the things that impact who we are one of the things that impact who we are the most is how the world moves around us. We have in modern it was a common idea back in the past that children were used by their parents to further their own ideas and purposes, and even for child labor. But nowadays this is not the case, because many people do not use their children for these kinds of ideas. Sorry. Sorry.
It's okay. Take your time. You still have 4 minutes left.
It was also common it's also very common nowadays for people to choose to not have children for personal reasons, such as financial situations, and just also for the fact that they do not want to have children. A person should not be forced into having children if that is not what they want. If I would prefer to live my life by working, spending time with my partner and friends, traveling, then I should be allowed to do that. I should not be forced to have a child when that is not something that I want to do, when that is not something that I feel ready to do. Having a child is a big responsibility. You are not only in charge of your life, but in charge of the life of another human being. That itself is a huge responsibility that a lot of people are not ready to be part of. And if that is not something that I can do, then I should not be forced into that. Why should I have to give up going on vacation with my friends just to take care of a child? Not to mention that a child takes a huge toll on not only your physical well-being, but also your mental well-being. And going back on this physical well-being, being pregnant and giving birth as a woman, that is a huge deal. Being pregnant is 9 months long. It has many ups and downs, and there are so many things that could go wrong. Then the pain that happens during the birth itself can not only be traumatic, but it could be lethal as well. It could cause death. And if I am not ready to risk my life just to bring a child into the world, then why should I not have that right? Why should someone force me to do that if that is not something I want to do? I should be able to choose if I want to have a child or not, because that is my choice. It's a freedom. It's a human right to choose how you use your body, when you use your body, and what happens with your body. Not to mention that nowadays people have very different mentalities as to how they were, comparing to how they were before. People nowadays prefer spending time at home and living their lives, being free to do what they want, how they want, to use their money how they want, and to not be overburdened with the fear of constantly caring and worrying about another human, a breathing human. Not to mention that a lot of people are now realizing the things that can go wrong in children, because a child could come out with a disability or with something that is not very common, and that could scare someone. They could not be ready to take care of that, and so someone should never be forced into something they're never ready for. And so as long as I do not want to have a child, I don't see why that impacts anyone else. I don't see how me choosing to not have a child makes it harder on anyone outside of me and my partner's lives. It has no impact on anyone else's life outside of my own and outside of anyone else's. And it does not impact anyone else's. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that speech. The speech time was 8 minutes and 18 seconds. All right, let's please welcome the first speaker from the opposition side.
I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. According to the Population Reference Bureau, PRB, the US birth rate has been declining. In 2020, the total fertility rate, which measures the average number of children a woman could have in her lifetime, based on the childbearing rates of women in a population in a given year, dropped to the lowest level ever recorded. And if we talk about Gen Z choosing not to have children, first of all, who are Gen Z? Gen Z are a generation of people starting from 1997 to 2012. So this generation is mostly minors, and they don't really have the experience nor the resources to have children. So being against the natural act of having children sounds kind of absurd, given the fact that this generation is still growing up as a kid, teenager, or young adult. When we think about having children, we only picture a pregnant woman in pain trying to push out a human being from her own body. But what we don't tend to think about is how deep this process is, from pregnancy to birth and maybe adoption, to the education of the child and his life as an active part of society. We will first of all, in our speech, prove that Gen Z shouldn't have to be so decisive about not having children, given their age and lack of life experience? Then we'll also prove that since times have changed, Gen Z would make better parents thanks to different factors regarding mental health, for instance. First of all, Gen Z tend to refuse to have children because of budgetary issues. They may be inclined to buy other things or invest, or they simply just don't have enough money for kids' expenses. For example, a house is more and more costly, so deciding not to have children to buy a smaller house or to afford a nicer place is understandable. But only 3% of Gen Z is deciding not to have children because of this factor. In a survey including 2,000 respondents, Gen Z prefer to spend more on clothes, entertainment, travels, while cars and houses weren't even in the top 3 of the reasons for living a childless life. This goes to show how Gen Z just isn't grown up enough to think about the future, and it's understandable given their young age. They shouldn't make decisions right now about not having children and stick with it, since they still have plenty of time to grow up and think about this matter later on. Other reasons this generation give for going childless include worries about climate change. And for example, 43% of people refuse to have children because of this reason. Or they could simply lack an interest in having kids, and they prioritize other matters such as careers. And in fact, an increase in women joining the workforce and prioritizing their careers differs greatly from past generation. That's a fact. And this challenges the notion that women are anchored to childbirth and domesticity. And this challenge is just pointless. We can't defy the human nature by just imposing new social constructs, such as independence for women by not having children, since the women sometimes actually want children and they seem intimidated by the new public opinion that has been conveyed by social media with brain-dead feminist movements. But while it's admirable that newer generations are increasingly making choices that matter to them rather than following older societal standards that have been followed for a century, it's also necessary to acknowledge the effects of a childless generation could entail. Choosing not to have children could have a great impact on our society, economy, and even culture. Because if we don't have children, which is going to be a new task force, who's going to pay for our taxes as we get older? Who's going to keep the economy afloat? Who's going to prevent this capitalist world from plummeting due to the lack of children? As absurd as it may sound, no children equals no future teachers, doctors, farmers, workers in general. And if the elderly population is bigger in size than the young people, we are doomed to work longer or have less retirement money or both. And we're actually seeing this in European countries, in France, for example. Also, with no children, who are we going to educate? Who is going to give new ideas, new inventions? A child is literally like a plant. The more you take care of it, the more ideas it grows, and the more it helps the future. If we suddenly stopped planting trees, we'd all be dead in a few years. And the same goes on with children. You could just say that a child can become the new Elon Musk or the next Hitler, but this reasoning is just absurd. We should just educate the child and we'll see how he'll grow up in the future. So another theory focuses on the value of children's innocence and curiosity, something that is often lost in the aging process. So imagine a society without imagination, creativity, and light-hearted questions and ideas. That's a good way to make the world more depressing, if you ask me. Lastly, the culture of a nation could be impacted if the number of children continues to go down. Children influence many aspects of life with their unique perspective that we often lose as adults. So they have a significant role in the future of the society, and it's truly hard to imagine how a society could function without children. Also, the nation's child population grew from nearly 72.4 million kids to almost 73.4 million kids. And despite this growth, the share of kids shrunk from 26% to 22% during the same time frame. And imagine if this percentage just continued dropping and dropping, we could all live in a world where children have nearly disappeared. And despite this statement sounding kind of dystopian, we could actually come to that point in the near future if Gen Z decides not to have children anymore. Despite the difficulties that it is facing, it shouldn't just stop thinking about this matter, which is literally what keeps us alive. And if Gen Z gives the example of COVID-19 and the crisis pushing them not to have children, we actually have, for example, the World War II, which didn't stop people from not giving birth at all. In the contrary, in some countries, we had even more children and the fertility rate went up. That's the arguments from the first speech as a first speaker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to remind everyone that you can offer POIs, and we haven't heard any in the first two speeches, so you are encouraged to offer POIs. All right, thank you for that speech. The speech time was 6 minutes and 23 seconds. We will now have the second speaker from the proposition team.
The proposition team will start its speech in 3, 2, 1. First and foremost, I would like to start by establishing the arguments presented by the other side. First off, many times was there brought out the fact that Gen Z lacks maturity, lacks the life experience needed to make such decisions. And that is, in our opinion, one of the strengths of Gen Z. It is, instead of rushing into decisions of such magnitude and importance, that is having children, we all decide to wait. We decide to wait for a moment where we're all more stable financially, where we're more stable emotionally, psychologically, and all that, and all of these other factors. Secondly, the opposition side has described the act of having children as natural, and that is, in our opinion, one of the many strengths of Gen Z is that we are defying what was considered natural for many, many decades. Not only do we think that having children is not supposed to be the norm and the end-all be-all of anyone's career and life, we decide that each and everyone has the choice to conduct yes or no choices. Whether they decide to have the children or not, that is not a natural choice. It is their own selfish, yes, but personal choice. Now that, yes.
You said that the Gen Z is not rushing, they're waiting to be financially stable to have children. This means that at the end they will have children.
It means that for now, Gen Z as they are, which is in their early 20s, are not fit because they decide that they are not fit to have these children. If they decide to have children later on, that is their own children. But for now, we have no obligation to demand children from them. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Then I will carry on. First and foremost, the economical reasons have been kind of brushed off by the opposition side, but we would like to take a closer look at the economical reasons as to why some Gen Z couples choose to not have children. First and foremost, living costs have dramatically increased, and that is not at all surprising. If we look at inflation rates in the last 20 years, we can see an incredible increase in housing prices, in gas prices, and all other necessities. Second, people want to retire early, and that is not a surprise at all. According to Forbes, when asked why they want to have kids, 89% of Generation Z women say they enjoy the flexibility of their lives are from not having children, and 70% value their alone time. That is one of the, as I said previously, one of the biggest strengths of Gen Z is that it is a generation that has decided to take time for itself. It has decided to be selfish in a positive way. Many generations have sacrificed their own well-being, mental health, and yes?
Yes. Is it a human's value to be selfish?
It is. If you decide not to be selfish and to live only for others, what purpose does your existence have? As I said, it is a generation that has decided to take time for itself by being selfish in a way that impacts no other person than itself. It is selfish not to harm others, but to preserve itself. So when people decide that they want to retire early because they do not want to spend their whole time working for an infant that they may not even want to bring into this world, people blame them for being too selfish. But I say, is there really a shame to being selfish in that context? Third reason, and third economical reason, is that there are many, many difficulties to finding stable jobs that bring medium to high income to support a whole family. That is especially a phenomenon observed as underemployment. It is that many young children, many young adults that have been through college and have master's degrees, graduate degrees, do not find jobs that qualify for their studies. They have jobs that are not fit and do not exploit all the magnitude of the studies they have spent dozens of years studying for. For example, someone who could do an engineering degree could find themselves working as a cashier in a supermarket just because the job market does not offer them enough job opportunities to exploit their jobs. And Generation Z is very conscious of that. 41.3% of recent college graduates, those aged 22 to 27, were employed in a job that did not require a college degree in December, which is up from 40.6% in 2020, says the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Now that Gen Z knows that their efforts in looking for a job and in studying may not bring enough money to support not only themselves, but also a whole family, why would they decide to put themselves at risk, financial risk, to bring into life children that they will most probably not be able to support? And I will conclude my second speech with the fact that Generation Z is very politically involved. We notice a lot of young people who define themselves as activists. Yes.
What do you mean politically involved when the voting rates are so low in almost every country?
I'm talking about activism.
Activism. Okay, I can't respond. I'm sorry.
So Generation Z, we notice that a lot of them, most of them, are very active in social rights, in gay rights, in trans rights, in human rights, in women's rights, all of these. So that it is a generation that is very conscious of the world that surrounds it. And many people cite the fact that overpopulation is one of the reasons that stops them from wanting to have children, because they are responsible people. Instead of wanting to bring more children into the world that they could just as easily adopt, many couples decide to just adopt, get children out of the foster care system that is, I repeat, that is destroying and demolishing kids' mental health, causes them depression, anxiety, a lot of mental health issues. Many young adults that take this role as a parent decide that instead of going through childbirth and having children themselves, they just want to save these children from the foster care system. And here concludes my speech.
Okay, thank you very much for that speech. The speech time was 7 minutes and 10 seconds. We will now have the second speaker from the opposition team.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am the second speaker, and I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So before I come down to my own arguments, let us have a look at what the proposition team said. They said that being pregnant is hard and that it's traumatic and that women could risk their lives when they are given birth, etc. I'm sorry, but when a woman, protected time. I'm sorry, but when a woman decides to have a child, she's aware of the risks. She's aware of what she's going to what's going to happen, etc. So when she's choosing to have a child, it's her choice. And plus, all of our mothers are gave birth, and they do not describe this experience as a traumatic experience. And a lot of women have 3 to 4 children, and to them it's not traumatic. Like giving birth is not traumatic, and they're not risking their lives, because you could be driving your car and you can be risking your life. You can die in a car crash. So you can be risking your life any time. It's not like while giving birth that you're going to risk your life. And yes.
Excuse me, we have not once brought up the fact that giving childbirth is traumatic. We have spoken about the economical conditions that bringing a child into the world causes for a young Gen Z couple, but we have not once spoken about the fact that women who choose to have a child of their own volition are not conscious of the risk that they encounter.
I think that the first speaker talked about giving birth and about how it is a traumatic experience. So I'll get back to
It was a
my
traumatic
speech.
experience. I said that it could be extremely painful and could cause death. I never said that it was traumatic.
Whoa. First
I'm
of all,
sorry, you did
yeah,
not
so,
ask for POI.
yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
Yeah,
I
so
didn't know
you
that
have
we had to ask the POI.
yeah, so individually you have to ask for a POI, and then individually you have to be accepted.
Oh, okay, my bad. I'm so sorry.
No problem. Don't worry, Kawtar. I'll give you an extra 15 seconds in your speech time.
Okay. So they said that having children is overwhelming, and it's it's overwhelming for Gen Z. But if you're choosing to have a child, it's not overwhelming because you chose to have a child. So it's not something that's going to be overwhelming. And if we don't have children, who's going to work in the future? Who's going to educate in the future? Who's going to we as Gen Z should have children. So why does the opposition think that we as Gen Z should have children? We can all agree that Gen Z is the most educated generation. They have experienced anxiety, depression, etc. So we expect them to be more inclusive, more understanding, and more accepting towards their children, because these experiences that they went through with mental health disorders and treatments will help them a lot when it comes to parenting, and it will make them more likely than previous generations to talk with their children. They're going to have open conversation. They are going to be ready to communicate with their children and help them seek mental health treatment if needed. And Gen Z are going to be hands-on parents, because they're going to value sharing experiences with their children, etc. Because when they were their childhood, during their childhood, they were using technology a lot. Like technology, we can say that technology was considered as their babysitter. So they were using phones 24/7. They were watching TV. They were using technology a lot. So they will want their children to lead a healthier lifestyle, to not use technology a lot. And also, the Gen Z will probably recognize the potentially harmful impacts of social media, etc. Because they will be more likely to adapt their children's use of technology, and they will buffer these negative impacts. And also, Gen Z is going to be more politically involved, and more politically active and involved in their community. Why? To make their children's future better. They are aware that they need to be politically active and involved in their communities to make their children's future better. So Gen Z is a really self-aware generation that's willing to make their children's future better. And they are also aware that having a child is costly. They know that if they want to raise a child in the best possible environments and conditions, they need a certain financial stability. So we can see that they care, and that they will be able to raise a generation of happy and healthy children. And they're also aware of what's going on in the world more than any other generation. They might be young, but they are definitely equipped with the right tools to form an even more educated and mental health aware generation, because we can never stress how important mental health is. For example, Gen Z is willing to identify their own mental illnesses and traumas and get the help they need, because they do not want their children to go through the same traumas and struggles as they did when they were kids. They are self-aware, and they're willing to make a change. They don't want their children to have traumas or to go through struggles because they did not deal with their mental health issues. And their children, I can guarantee that their children are going to have a chance to speak about their emotions, their problems, and their mental health issues. And they're going to be the parents are going to be emotionally available and emotionally healthy, and thus they are going to try to have a healthy relationship with their partner, and the child is going to have a healthier childhood. So Gen Z's awareness and approach to mental health can have a positive influence on their parenting experience. It will allow them to be emotionally healthy, to raise and help them have open conversation with their kids. And this will be, as I said, beneficial for them and for their kids. And they will have access to technology, but this wouldn't have impact. This wouldn't have a bad impact on them since their parents are aware of its downsides. This will also help them shape. This will also help them shape a future generation that will understand, accept, and seek to treat their own mental health issues. So, for all of these reasons, we're proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech. The speech time was 7 minutes and 3 seconds. We will now have the third and final speaker from the proposition side.
Hi, it's me again. So I will be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The opposition side was quite confusing in their arguments, if I may say, maybe even contradictory. They said, I will start from newest argument to oldest argument. They said that Gen Z is capable of identifying their own mental illness. I think what they meant to say was that Gen Z would be more likely to put their children through therapy, to get them the correct treatments, to have them have a stable mental health all the way through. Because if Gen Z self-diagnoses, that's not great. Anyway, they also mentioned a lot of about the duty to have children. But we mentioned previously that Gen Z should be the generation that considers itself putting itself above all these other previously stated expectations that have been placed on them by their parents, their grandparents, to have children and grandchildren. And the fact that opposition side just keeps bringing up the fact that because Gen Z will be great parents, they have to be parents and they will be great parents. That is just not something we agree with. Even if someone has the potential to be great, they do not have the duty to become great for any other people than themselves. If someone has the potential to go to Harvard, but they do not want to go through the whole trauma and show that is the whole workload that is being in Harvard, then who? Yes.
Why wouldn't Gen Z be able to identify their own mental illnesses?
You spoke about identifying their children's mental illnesses.
I said they will be able to identify their mental illnesses so that their children can have a healthy childhood.
How does that make sense?
Because as they have
sorry, Kawtar, you're not.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, you have to ask
Yes,
for the
yes,
POI
I'm
again. And Doha, you're not allowed to ask a follow-up question. You just take a question and answer it and move on.
Okay. As I was saying, even if someone has the potential to be a great person, if they do not want to bear that responsibility, no one has the right to force them into it. That is just taking away someone's human rights, human integrity, the right to decide for themselves, and that is just not right. That is something that the older generations have had taken away from them for many, many generations. For example, we can observe the fact that your grandparents have been pregnant with your parents, maybe when they were 18, 19, 20, and maybe they did not have the time to complete a full education and get into a career that is fully satisfying to them because they were forced by peer pressure, by their parents, by the people around them to have children early, because that's what they decided was best for everyone, but not for themselves. They did not take, you can say maybe they did not take even this decision for themselves, whether they realized how, because maybe they were too young or too immature to decide that. Whereas Gen Z, for example, yes.
We didn't say that Gen Z have to have children, at a young age. We just said that they are aware that they need the right education and the right, financial stability to have children, and they can raise them in the right way.
Yes, that's what we said too. Yet you insist on the fact that Gen Z will have children later on, and we decide that the fact that Gen Z has the complete right to not have children, whether they are 20 today or 40 tomorrow. Anyway, to add into the fact that Gen Z has the complete right to decide whether or not they want to have children or not, we will talk more about the point of view of the parents, for example, the millennials. Let's say that it's plain selfish for them to want a kid to secure their own later goals in life. For example, if you as a parent decide your only motive to have a child is someone to care about you when you're 60, 70 in an old retirement house, then aren't you the one being selfish? And not only for your own reasons, selfish reasons, because here you bring a child into the world to inflict further responsibility onto them. On top of that, many people now decide to bring children into the world for economical reasons, heirs to an economical empire, for example. You are giving a child life by your own hands and by your own decision because you, as a parent, want to have this whole plan set out for them and for them to carry on your legacy. Whereas we stand by the opinion that Gen Z, even if they bring children into the world, they have to be conscious of the fact that because they too have been inflicted by this trauma of having so much responsibility onto them that it causes them debilitating mental illnesses, that they will not make the same mistakes. They will learn from their parents, and even if they bring children into the world, they will be conscious of the fact that these children are not their property. They will never be their property. They are their own people, and that they have the full freedom to do whatever they please in life as long as it doesn't harm themselves and others around them. It may be a bit idealistic to say that all Gen Z couples will be like this, but it is not impossible to think that many of them, especially, yes.
So just implicitly saying that all parents consider their kids as their property?
We're saying that many millennial parents have been forced into having children in that way with maybe partners they did not have a long-term relationship with, and that caused disdain for their children, that they compensate with the fact that, oh, my child can be useful to me now. Is that it?
Yeah.
Then I will
No, I
carry on.
can't respond.
Yeah.
And finally, we would like to talk about the social pressure. Not only are Gen Z forced, as we see on the opposition side, to take responsibility because they will be great parents to have these children. That is, as we said previously in our first and second speech, taking where they're, no, I will not check it, that they will take responsibility to have these children. As we've said previously, having children should not be mandatory, even if you have the qualifications to be a parent. It is something that comes after a thorough discussion with your partner that you both agree on after a stable relationship where you both will be able to. No.
Sorry, it's protected time.
That you will be able to provide them with a stable education, income, love, and all the other factors that you may not have had a child, because it is obvious to see Gen Z is a generation that goes much more often than other generations to therapy, that complains a lot about mental illness, that is much more pessimistic than other generations. For the people of Gen Z that are stable enough to have these children, they have to be good in their own mindset and in their financial mindset. But for many and most and majority of them, they just do not feel ready enough, even if they have the qualifications, even if they are activists, even if they are stable financially, they do not feel like they have the total and complete capability to handle a child. And finally, this is how we end. In a world that is already brimming with kids who have no home, why add to the suffering instead of helping them? Thank you very much.
Thank you for that speech. The speech time was 8 minutes and 22 seconds. We will now have the final speech of this debate, which will be the third opposition speaker.
Okay, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, your audio is good.
Can you hear me, guys? Right. Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Oh, So far, the opposite team has been defending an idea that is immoral because they are encouraging stopping women from giving birth, which is something that they wish for, they crave for, and they go to great lengths to do so. They are defending an idea that is illogical because it means stopping the continuity of humanity. They are defending an idea that is simply mistaken. And this is what I'll elaborate on in my speech while reinforcing my team's arguments. First, I want to start by the fact that the other team has been has been implicitly saying that we're trying to force old women to have birth. We are not trying to force anything. We're just defending the best option. My opponents' team, the opponents have been defending the idea that children basically change the way we enjoy our lives, take up the time of the birth giver and their partner, limit our ambitions and aspirations, impact the women's body negatively, etc. This idea is mistaken. Having children is the most fulfilling experience possible, and that's based on what women say. Kids complete us. Parenthood is the fulfillment of our biological purpose. It is your subjective and misogynistic and sexist opinion that pregnancy impacts women's bodies in a negative way. In many eyes, pregnancy makes women more beautiful. Also, my opponents have been defending the idea that children are the biggest expender most people ever undertake. Also, this idea is mistaken. Children provide for us in our old age. Offsprings are an investment, but also important in many countries with little or adequate state support, protected time. For the elderly, it is protected time. Did you ever go? Did you
No,
ever
it's
go,
not.
dear
It's not
opponents,
protected
for
time.
retirement? Oh, yeah, I'll take the POI.
As we said previously, we don't like the idea of children being investments in the long term. They are not investments. Children are living beings that have their own goals, aspirations, and do not have to provide for yourself in your moments of needs. Do you understand this? If you view them as investments, you are taking away from their humanity and making them
Sorry.
as,
The POI question is too long. It should be 15 seconds or less.
Sorry.
When I say investment, I don't mean it in a financial bad way. When I say investment, I mean an emotional investment that is beneficial for everybody, society, parents, everybody. But also important in the many countries with little or no adequate state support for the elderly. Did you ever go, dear opponent, to a retirement home and listen to how old people desire and wish and crave kids to take care of them? Believe me, it is all what they talk about. You can only see regret in their eyes. Strangers or the state will never care for us or as our own flesh and blood will. Also, the opponents team also implicitly said that the notion that parenthood is somehow a duty, or the completion of one's social existence has been the prime weapon, the repression of women's rights. Humans owe it to the society to brought them and provide them, to also owe to the society that brought them and provided them, to also provide for its future by having children. Human society protects them. They have a responsibility to ensure its continuation. Failing birth rates in Western countries show how real the threat is from failing to live up the responsibility. Also, the opponent's team said that ambitions are limited, the lives become smaller, etc. when you give birth. Part of parenthood is patience through the perils of one's child adolescence. Part of it is letting go. Undeniable, that is painful. Undeniably, that is painful, but it's worth it for the joy of having brought someone into this world and loving them. Ultimately, parents must let their children go as part of the process of the children growing up and having children of their own. Yeah, the opponent's team also said that the world population has exploded in the last 2 centuries to the point at which it is irresponsible to add its number. That is such a mistaken idea, and I'm going to reinforce my team's arguments by saying that your idea is mistaken because, dear opponents, the world doesn't suffer from overcrowding or overpopulation as we don't have resources anymore. This is wrong. What we suffer from is the problem of distribution of resources. Again, it is our fault. We have enough resources. We can still have kids and more people. All the current population, dear opponents, can fit in the city of Los Angeles if they're standing next to each other. Did you know that? What we suffer from is inequality of distribution of resources. Again, why would we blame that an overpopulation, that's on overpopulation? Some people have too much food, others do not, and that's the problem, and it is not today's debate. Also, the opponent's team has been talking about how women go through a lot of pain to give birth. And while that's true, women themselves assure and argue and say that and repeat and insist on how having children is the most fulfilling experience someone can go through. And while it is true that giving birth can be painful, it is a fact that women think that the pleasure of having kids is stronger than birth given pain. Or else, tell me why, dear opponents, why would the majority of women who give birth choose to do it more than once, even more than twice? Also, the proposition team also, at least they argued that the world is, we cannot bring more people in the world. It's a violent place. It's full of human misery, etc. Having a child means having hope in humanity, dear opponents. Dear audience, are we just going to stop having kids because the world we live in is violent, is a dark place full of human misery and suffering? Are we just going to let the world die slowly with us, the Generation Z, dying because of all the negative impacts we had on it? I'm not going to accept that. Are we just going to take no responsibility for our atrocious acts instead of having kids and children and teaching them and raising them properly and telling them how and telling them that what and how to save the world? Is it going to be a cycle, destroy the planet, decide to now have kids because they are going to suffer because we're such an angelic beings and we want the best for our angelic beings? We're selfish, we're not angelic beings. We want the best for ourselves, and that's against humans and universal values, which the opponent team argued against, which is simply a mistaken idea. I'm talking about universal values. You can Google them. Selfishness is not a human value. So destroy the planet, decide to not have kids because they are going to suffer because such angelic beings. Go to another planet, maybe Mars, have kids again because that's what humans do. Destroy and then repeat the cycle again. Is this what we are as responsible, intellectual, free human beings? I hope not, because that goes exactly and totally against our values as humans. Don't you see, dear opponent, that the sterile women who biologically can't give birth suffer and seek for years and decades ways to give birth? Don't you see that? Are we just gonna forcefully stop women from doing something they crave and wish for to this point? Doesn't this go against our values as humans? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech. That speech was 7 minutes and 38 seconds.